Somewhere in your life, you have given an answer that cost you more than anyone in the room understood. This woman gave hers on national television, and nothing was the same after. Somewhere in the archive of television moments that nobody planned and nobody could have planned, the unscripted instance when a camera happens to be pointed at the exact right face at the exact right second. There is a clip that runs 4 minutes and 18 seconds, filmed on a Tuesday afternoon in February 2017, in a television studio in Atlanta, Georgia. The clip does not begin with anything that looks important. It begins with a woman standing at a game show podium in a yellow cardigan, waiting for the host to read a question. She is 49 years old. Her name is Patricia Howell. She has short, natural hair and glasses that she keeps touching at the bridge, a small, nervous habit that appears 3 times in the clip before the moment that changes everything. She looks like a woman who is holding herself very carefully together, the way you hold a full cup when you are walking across a room and cannot afford to spill. She had been holding herself that carefully for 8 months. The question Steve Harvey read was, "Name something a husband does to show his wife he's still crazy about her." The category was not unusual. Family Feud had run variations of that question dozens of times over its history. It was a warm category, the kind that gets laughs, gets gestures toward spouses in the audience, gets a certain comfortable energy moving through the studio. The Howell family, standing at the left podium, was a good family for a warm category. Patricia's sister Donna, 52, was the kind of woman who made rooms louder just by arriving. Her brother Curtis, 46, had a laugh that was essentially its own sound effect. Her nephew Jalen, 19, kept doing finger guns at his aunt every time she looked at him, which was making her smile in spite of herself. Her niece Tamara, 23, had already charmed the audience twice with answers that were simultaneously wrong and completely understandable. It was a good day. Or it was trying to be. Patricia's husband, Robert Howell, had died on June 14, 2016, of a heart attack in the kitchen of their home in Augusta, Georgia. He was 51 years old. He had been making breakfast. Patricia had been in the shower. She had come downstairs in her robe and found him on the floor beside the stove, and the eggs were still cooking, and she had turned off the burner before she called 911, a detail she would not be able to explain later, a thing her hands had done while her mind was somewhere it couldn't come back from right away. They had been married 23 years. He was the one who had submitted the Family Feud application. This was the part that nobody knew until later, that Robert had filled out the form in April of 2016, 2 months before he died, as a surprise. He had told Patricia he had a plan for their summer. He had not told her what it was. He had filled out the form, listed the family members, described the family in the way the form requested, and submitted it. And then he had died before the casting team called. The call had come in August. Donna had answered it because Patricia had not been answering the phone reliably in August and had said yes, immediately, before she'd fully thought it through, because she understood in the way sisters understand things that this was Robert's gift to them, and they were going to receive it. Patricia had not wanted to come. She had said this to Donna calmly and repeatedly for 6 weeks. She had said she was not ready to be on television. She had said she was not ready to be in public in the way that a game show required, which was a specific kind of public, bright lit, loud, required to perform cheerfulness on cue. Donna had not argued. She had simply made clear, in the way that older sisters make things clear, that they were going, and that Patricia was coming with them, and that Robert had chosen this for them, and that honoring a gift meant accepting it even when accepting it was hard. Patricia had not told her children about the application. She had 2, Marcus, 26, who lived in Charlotte, and Denise, 22, who was in her last year at Georgia State. She had not told them because she was still, 8 months on, managing how much of her grief was visible to them. She was their mother. She was the person who was supposed to make it possible for them to survive their father's death, which meant she could not fully survive it herself in front of them, which meant she was splitting herself every day into the part that held them and the part that she put somewhere else, somewhere she didn't look at directly. She had told them she was going on a trip with Donna. This was not untrue. The lie she permitted herself was smaller than that. It was a lie of omission, repeated every time Marcus called and asked how she was doing, and she said she was doing better, which was technically true, because she was doing better than she had been in August, when she had not answered the phone. She was not doing well, she was doing better. These are different things, and she knew they were different things, and she said better anyway. Because Marcus was 26, and he had lost his father, and he did not need to also lose the version of his mother that could say she was better. On the morning of the taping, she had sat on the edge of the hotel bed in Atlanta while Donna was in the bathroom, and she had held her phone, and she had looked at the last text message Robert had sent her. It was from June 13, 2016, the day before. It said, "Don't forget we're out of coffee." She had read this text message most mornings since June 14th. She had read it that morning in the hotel. She had put the phone down and looked at the wall for a while, and then she had put on the yellow cardigan, his favorite color on her, a thing he had said so many times it had become a fact of their life together, the way certain things become facts, and she had gone downstairs to meet her family. Donna had not said anything about the cardigan. She had taken Patricia's hand in the elevator and held it until the doors opened. Steve Harvey read the question. Name something a husband does to show his wife he's still crazy about her. Jalen buzzed in immediately. He said flowers. Number 3 on the board. He pointed his finger guns at Patricia. She managed to smile. Curtis said surprises her. Number 6, small points. He shrugged enormously. Tamara said, tells her she's beautiful. Number 2. Donna reached over and grabbed her arm. They were doing well. The audience was warm. The energy was good in the way that good families make energy good. Then Steve turned to Patricia. He said, "What do you think, Patricia?" Later, Patricia would say she didn't plan what came out. She would say she had been thinking about the question the way you think about a question when you know the answer from the inside, not from the outside, not as a game show category, but as a life. As 23 years of a specific man who had shown her in specific ways that he was still crazy about her. The breakfast he made every Sunday without being asked. The way he adjusted the thermostat before she said she was cold, because he always knew before she said it. The Family Feud application he had filled out in April as a surprise, because he knew she had always wanted to be on the show, and had never made herself the priority to do it. Never chosen herself ahead of the family's calendar. She touched her glasses at the bridge, the 3rd time. She said, "He does something thoughtful that you didn't know you needed." The studio fell completely silent, not because it was a clever answer, because of the way she said it. Because of what was sitting behind the way she said it. All 8 months of it, all 23 years of it, the breakfast and the thermostat and the application filled out by a man who was already, though no one knew it yet, 2 months from dying in a kitchen while the eggs were still on the stove. Steve Harvey had the answer card in his hand. He was not looking at it. He was looking at her. The board dinged. Number 1 answer, 63 points. The audience applauded, but it was the kind of applause that doesn't quite know what to do with itself. It started and then softened, as if the room could feel that applause was not the right response to whatever had just happened, but didn't have another response available. Steve said, "That's the number one answer." Then he said, "Patricia, can I ask you something?" She nodded. He said, "How long have you been married?" The room felt it before she said it. Some rooms can do that. Feel the weight of what's coming before it arrives, the way the air changes before rain. She said very quietly, "I was married for 23 years. She stopped. She said, "My husband passed last June." The studio fell completely silent. Not a sound, not a shuffle, not a breath that anyone allowed to be audible. Steve Harvey lowered the answer card to his side. He stood in front of her for a long moment, and he said nothing. And the nothing was not empty. It was full of something that everyone in the room could feel pressing against the walls. A camera operator named Felicia, 7 years with the show, said later she had stopped breathing for those seconds. She said she became aware of it because she had to consciously remember to start again. Steve said, "That answer was for him." It was not a question. It was not a statement made for the audience. It was something said to Patricia Howell, quietly, with the certainty of a man who had just understood something completely. Patricia's face moved, just once, just slightly, in the way that faces move when someone sees something you have been carrying in the dark and names it in the light. Her chin dropped a fraction. Her eyes went somewhere briefly that was not the studio. Then she came back. She looked at Steve. She nodded, once. The studio fell completely silent again, and this time it lasted longer than before. The floor director said afterward she did not call cut. She did not signal anything. She stood at her station and let the silence be what it was, which was the right decision, which she did not make consciously, but which her instincts made for her, the way instincts take over when the situation is larger than protocol. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to the audience, and his face was doing something that Steve Harvey's face did not often do on this stage, which was simply feeling something without managing it. He said, "I want you all to know what just happened here." He said, "This woman came here today with her family to receive a gift her husband gave them before he left." He said it again, slowly. "Before he left." He said, "And she just answered a question about marriage with the truest thing I have heard on this stage in 9 years. He said, "He does something thoughtful that you didn't know you needed." He said, "That is not a game show answer. That is a woman telling you who her husband was." There were people crying in the audience. Not a few. The production team's count from the tape identified at least 40 audience members visibly emotional. 2 lighting technicians near the grid had stopped moving. A production assistant near the stage exit had turned away from the room and was facing the wall with her arms crossed over her chest, and the camera in the back caught her shoulders moving. But Steve wasn't done. He looked at Donna. He said, "You brought her here." She nodded. He said, "That was the right thing." Donna put her hand over her mouth and nodded again. He turned back to Patricia. He stood close, not invading, just present, the way you stand close to someone when you want them to know that you are not going anywhere. He said, "I want to talk to everyone watching at home." He said, "There are people in your life right now who are answering questions about the present with answers that belong to someone who is gone." He said, "That is not sadness. That is love that has nowhere new to go yet." He said, "Give it somewhere to go." He said, "Let the people around you know what they mean to you in the specific ways they mean it. Not in general, not in theory, but in the specific thing they do on the specific Tuesday that you don't tell them you notice." He said, "Because one day one of you will be standing somewhere being asked a question, and the truest answer you have will be about them." He paused. He said, "And that answer will be the number one answer on the board." The opposing family, the Beltons from Nashville, 4 brothers and their mother, who had played with great energy and tremendous volume and had been a wonderful counterweight all episode, had gone entirely still at their podium. The oldest brother, a man named Raymond, 55, walked across the stage without being asked. He walked directly to Patricia Howell and he said, "My daddy's been gone 11 years. He said, "I still answer questions about him too. I just didn't know that's what I was doing until right now." He put his hand out. She took it. He held it for a long moment, and then he nodded and walked back to his family. The studio fell completely silent one last time. The clip went up 4 days after the taping. The show's social team had debated it, not whether to post it, but how to frame it, what to say in the caption, whether anything needed to be said at all. They decided on nothing, just the clip, no caption. It didn't need one. Within 24 hours, 17 million views. Within 72 hours, 44 million. Within 10 days, 81 million, the highest view count of any Family Feud clip in the show's 45-year history, and the highest view count of any unscripted television moment of 2017 across all networks. The comments ran to over 400,000. A hospice nurse in Minnesota wrote, "I work with dying people every day, and I am not prepared for this." A man in Nairobi wrote that he had called his wife from his car in the parking lot at work and told her 3 specific things she did that he had never said out loud. A woman in Manchester wrote, "My mother died in September. I don't have words for what watching this felt like. I'll just say it felt like being seen." 3 months after the taping, the production team received a letter from Marcus Howell, Patricia's son in Charlotte. He said his mother had told him about the taping after the clip went up. He said he had watched it 11 times. He said, "I didn't know my father filled out that application. My mother told me after the clip. I've been trying to figure out how to say thank you for something I can't fully name. So I'll just say, my father knew what we needed before we did." That sounds like him. A year after the taping, Patricia Howell gave a short interview to a local Augusta television station. She said she had watched the clip once, the day it went up, and had not watched it again. She said she didn't need to. She said she wore the yellow cardigan to the taping because it was his favorite color on her, and she wanted him there in whatever way he could be there, and she thinks maybe he was. She said she was not sure she believed in signs exactly, but she was not sure she disbelieved in them either. And she said she had found, in the months since, that the answer she gave on the show was one she was still living inside. He does something thoughtful that you didn't know you needed. She said, "I am still finding the things I didn't know I needed. Some of them I find and I think, that was Robert. That was him leaving something for later." Today, the clip sits at over 112 million views. It is the only Family Feud clip to surpass 100 million. Marcus Howell, now 32, works as a middle school teacher in Charlotte. He told a journalist last year that he starts every school year by telling his students that the most important answers are always the ones that cost you something. Denise Howell, now 29, is a social worker in Atlanta. She has a framed print on her desk, not of the clip, not of her father, but of the sentence. "He does something thoughtful that you didn't know you needed." She says she looks at it when the work is hard, which is often. She says it reminds her what thoughtfulness actually means, which is not kindness in the abstract, but attention paid to a specific person in a specific moment. And that this is what her father did, and this is what she is trying to do. One case at a time, one person at a time, in an office in Atlanta with a framed sentence on her desk. The number one answer is always the truest one, not the most obvious, not the most crowd-pleasing, the one that costs the most to say, and lands the hardest when it lands, the one that comes from somewhere below performance and below strategy, and below the careful management of how much of yourself you allow a room full of strangers to see. Patricia Howell wore a yellow cardigan and touched her glasses at the bridge 3 times and gave the number 1 answer because she was not answering the question. She was answering for a man who had filled out a form in April to give his family a summer surprise and was gone by June, and whose last text message was about coffee, and whose favorite color on his wife was yellow, and who had known, without being able to know, exactly what they would need when he was no longer there to give it to them. Some people leave gifts that take years to fully open. Robert Howell left one in April. Patricia opened it in February, in a yellow cardigan, in a studio full of strangers who could not stop crying, on a Tuesday afternoon that nobody planned. If this story reached something in you, like it reached something in me, please hit the like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story like this one, and share this with someone who is grieving, or someone who is loved and doesn't fully know it yet. Because 112 million people shared something for a reason, and that reason is probably someone you already know.